You didn't raise a daughter. You raised a piggy bank you tried to slaughter. Those were the last words my mother heard me say before the FBI kicked down the doors of our company gala. 5 minutes earlier, I had been standing on a stage in front of 200 investors, holding a glass of champagne that my own sister had handed me. I watched her eyes glitter with anticipation. I watched my mother lean forward in her chair, her knuckles white, waiting for me to take that first sip. They thought the drug would kick in within 30 seconds. They thought I would collapse, be dragged out on a stretcher, and wake up in a locked facility with my signature forged on a transfer of power. But instead of drinking, I looked straight at them. I smiled, and I poured the champagne onto the floor. The sound of crystal shattering cut through the room like a gunshot. Before the liquid even soaked into the carpet, I leaned into the microphone and said, "Mom, Courtney, you forgot something. I'm the auditor. I check everything, even my drinks." Then I pressed a button on the remote in my hand. The massive LED screen behind me, which was supposed to show a tribute to our company's history, went black. A second later, it flickered to life with grainy, black and white footage. It showed my sister's hands shaking as she tipped a vial of clear liquid into my water bottle earlier that afternoon. It showed my mother standing guard at the door. The ballroom went dead silent. But here is the question I need you to answer right now. If you found out the people who gave you life were trying to take away your freedom for money, would you run? Or would you stay and burn their world to the ground? Tell me in the comments what you would do. Because I made my choice. And I didn't run. To understand why I destroyed my family on a Saturday night, you have to go back 3 months to a Tuesday morning. That was the day the math finally stopped adding up. My name is Savannah, and I am 32 years old. For the last decade, I told myself I was the internal auditor for our family's luxury pharmaceutical empire in Chicago because I was being groomed for leadership. I told myself my parents, Robert and Deborah, were hard on me because they respected my competence. I was wrong. I wasn't the heir. I was the janitor. It started with a routine quarterly review. I was alone in my office, scrolling through the grant allocations for our research and development department. The numbers on the screen were clean. Too clean. I didn't need to run a complex algorithm to see the rot. I just looked at the vendor list. A shell company in the Cayman Islands had billed us for clinical trials that never happened. $3.2 million. Gone. I didn't panic. I didn't call the police. I printed the ledger, walked down the hall to my father's mahogany-paneled office, and laid the paper on his desk. My mother was there too, sipping espresso by the window. "Someone is embezzling from the R&D grants," I said, my voice steady. I traced the signature. "It's Courtney." I expected outrage. I expected my father to summon my younger sister and demand an explanation. I expected them to protect the company. Instead, Robert just sighed. He didn't even look at the paper. He looked at me with a mix of exhaustion and disappointment. "We know, Savannah," he said. "The heir left the room. You know? She stole $3 million of federal grant money. That's prison time, Dad. That's the end of the company." "It's not theft," my mother said, turning from the window. Her voice was terrifyingly casual. "It's an allocation. Courtney made some investment errors. She needed liquidity. We authorized it retroactively. She gambled it," I realized aloud. "She didn't invest it. She burned it. She's the face of our innovation." Robert snapped, slamming his hand on the desk. "She has the vision. You're the mechanic. Your job isn't to question the spending. Your job is to make the books balance so the auditors don't ask questions. Fix it, Savannah. Hide it." I stood there, freezing in the climate-controlled air. In that moment, the illusion of my life dissolved. I saw the hierarchy clearly for the first time. Courtney was the golden child, the asset, the shiny object they wanted the world to admire. I was the fix-it girl. The drudge. The one they kept around to sweep up the broken glass. They didn't love me. They employed me. And the salary was my silence. "I can't fix this," I said. "It's fraud." "Then you're useless to us," Deborah said. She looked at me with eyes devoid of maternal warmth. "If you can't protect your sister, why are you even here?" They thought they had shamed me into compliance. They thought that by reminding me of my place, I would bow my head and start cooking the books. But they made a fatal miscalculation. They forgot that an auditor's greatest weapon isn't the ability to hide the truth. It's the ability to document it. I didn't quit that day. I didn't scream. I went back to my office, sat down, and opened a new, encrypted file. They wanted me to handle the numbers? Fine. I was going to account for every single cent they had stolen, and I was going to make sure the receipt was itemized. I didn't need a forensic team to find the poison. I just needed to know my sister. Courtney was lazy. She didn't hide things in safes or under floorboards. She hid them in plain sight, assuming no one would dare question her. 2 days before the gala, I walked into her bedroom while she was at a spa appointment. It took me 30 seconds. I opened the bottom drawer of her vanity, pushed aside a pile of silk scarves, and there it was. A small, amber glass vial. Unmarked. I didn't send it to a lab. I didn't wait for results. I followed the no-manual rule of my life. Test the variables immediately. I took the vial downstairs to the sunroom. My mother prized her rare orchids more than she valued her children. I selected the healthiest one. A vibrant purple bloom she had been nurturing for 3 years. I tipped a single drop onto the soil. Then I sat down and waited. By the time the sun began to set, the leaves had curled. By dinner, the stems were black. It wasn't just a sedative. It was a chemical weapon. That night, the house was quiet, but voices carried through the vents. I stood in the hallway outside my father's study, my phone recording, pressing my ear against the wood. "We can't just fire her," Robert was saying. "She owns 30% of the voting shares. If she votes no on the merger, the deal dies. Then she can't vote," Deborah replied. Her voice was calm, efficient. "We invoke the incapacity clause. Dr. Evans is ready. Once she has the episode at the party, he'll sign the pink slip. Acute psychosis. We'll get emergency guardianship within 48 hours. And then we sign the deal. We put her in the facility upstate. They have a long-term ward. She'll be safe there. And quiet." I lowered the phone. My hand wasn't shaking. In that moment, the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. I finally understood the arithmetic of my family. You have to understand how a narcissist keeps their books. To Robert and Deborah, I wasn't a human being. I was an asset. For 30 years, I had been a performing asset generating value, solving problems, keeping the family ledger in the black. But the moment I found the fraud, my status changed. I became a liability. I was a bad debt. And in business, you don't nurture a bad debt. You don't try to fix it. You liquidate it. They weren't trying to help me. They weren't even trying to hurt me. Not really. They were just balancing the books, eliminating the line item that stood between them and a $100 million payout. It was terrifying. But it was also liberating, because you can't reason with a liquidation sale. You can't appeal to the sentiment of a calculator. I went back to my room and looked at the dress I had bought for the gala. It was navy blue, severe, professional. The uniform of the good soldier. I threw it in the trash. If they wanted a show, I would give them a show. I wasn't going to run away. I wasn't going to call the police and file a report that would get buried in paperwork. I was going to walk onto that stage, look them in the eye, and show them exactly what happens when an asset decides to audit the books. I texted Marcus, the head of security. He had been with the company for 20 years. He knew where the bodies were buried because he had helped dig the holes. But I knew something my parents didn't. Marcus had a daughter with a heart condition, and the company health plan had just denied her surgery. "I know about the denial," I texted him. "Help me burn them, and I'll pay for the surgery myself. Cash." 3 dots appeared. Then a single word. Done. The trap was set. Now, I just had to step into it. The silence in the ballroom was heavy enough to crush a lung. 200 pairs of eyes were fixed on me. I could see the confusion rippling through the crowd. They had seen the glass shatter, but they didn't understand the game yet. My mother, Deborah, was half rising from her chair, her face a mask of furious panic. She was signaling to the security team in the back, the ones she had hired, not Marcus. She wanted me off that stage before I said another word. But I wasn't done. I had to close the deal. I gripped the podium, letting my shoulders slump. I forced a tremor into my hands. I needed to look broken. I needed to look exactly like the unstable, overwhelmed daughter they had spent months painting me to be. I apologize, I stammered into the microphone, my voice wavering perfectly. My parents were right. The pressure. I can't handle it anymore. I'm not well. The tension in the room broke. I saw Robert's shoulders relax. I saw a smirk touch Courtney's lips. They thought the drug had kicked in early. Or better yet, that I had finally cracked under the psychological weight of their gaslighting. "I have the papers here," I said, reaching into the podium. I pulled out a thick, blue legal folder. It wasn't a speech. It was a transfer of executive authority. "Effective immediately," I announced, my voice gaining a desperate edge. "I am resigning as CEO. I am transferring all voting rights, all operational control, and all executive liability to my sister, Courtney." A gasp went through the room. This was the moment. The Trojan horse was at the gates. Courtney didn't wait for decorum. She practically ran up the stairs to the stage. She didn't look at me with concern. She didn't ask if I was okay. She looked at the folder like a starving wolf looks at a wounded deer. "It's for the best, Savannah," she whispered, leaning in close so the mic wouldn't catch it. "Go rest. I'll fix your mess." She grabbed the pen. I held my breath. This was the critical variable. If she hesitated, if she read the fine print about assuming all past and current federal liabilities, the trap would fail. But Courtney was a narcissist. She didn't see a legal document. She saw a crown. She signed. She initialed. She stamped it with her thumbprint. It was done. The ink was wet. She was the CEO. I watched her straighten up, beaming at the crowd, waving the paper like a trophy. She thought she had just won the kingdom. She had no idea she had just signed a confession. I stepped back, letting my weakness evaporate. I stood tall. I smoothed my jacket. "Congratulations, Courtney," I said, my voice ice cold and crystal clear. "You are now fully responsible for everything this company has done, including this." I raised the remote again. "Marcus," I said, "play the tape." The screen behind us didn't just show the video, it roared to life. The audio was crisp, enhanced by Marcus's team. "Just 3 drops." My mother's voice boomed through the ballroom speakers. "She'll be confused, disoriented. Evans will sign the commitment papers by midnight." On the screen, 20 feet high, Courtney's face was twisted in concentration as she poisoned my water. The ballroom erupted. It wasn't polite murmurs anymore. It was chaos. Courtney froze. The smile slid off her face like melting wax. She looked at the screen, then at me, then at the paper in her hand. "Happy Inauguration Day, sister," I whispered. "Hope you enjoyed the champagne." The chaos that followed wasn't the kind I expected. I expected shame. I expected my mother to cover her face, my father to shout denials, my sister to run. I expected the dignity of the room to collapse under the weight of the truth. But I had underestimated Deborah. She didn't freeze. She didn't cry. She didn't look at the screen where her crime was playing on a loop. She looked at the crowd. And she screamed. "Cut the feed!" She shrieked, her voice cracking with a perfect, practiced hysteria. "Turn it off! My daughter is having an episode." She rushed toward the stage, not like a criminal caught red-handed, but like a terrified mother trying to save a child from herself. "Savannah, honey, look at me," she pleaded, loud enough for the back row to hear. "It's the psychosis again. You're hallucinating. That video isn't real. You made it. You told Dr. Evans you were hearing voices." "Oh God, Robert, she's off her meds." The air in the room shifted instantly. The investors, who seconds ago had been looking at my family with horror, now looked at me with pity. Uncertainty rippled through the gala. Was this a whistleblower exposing a crime? Or was it a mental breakdown broadcast live? I stood frozen at the podium. This was the trap. I realized then that I had walked into the most dangerous version of gaslighting. The gaslight paradox. My mother wasn't trying to disprove the evidence. She knew she couldn't. Instead, she was weaponizing my reaction. If I got angry, I looked unstable. If I shouted, I looked violent. If I tried to explain the logic of the fraud, I looked like a conspiracy theorist unraveling in public. She was using my survival instinct as proof of my insanity. "I'm not crazy," I said into the mic, but my voice sounded thin against the rising murmur of the crowd. "Robert, the papers!" Deborah yelled. My father stepped out from the shadows of the wings. He wasn't cowering. He was holding a manila folder high in the air like a shield. "I have the medical files here," he announced to the room, his voice booming with authority. "Acute paranoid schizophrenia. Dr. Evans signed the petition for involuntary admission this morning. She is a danger to herself. Please, everyone, clear the room. We need to get her to the hospital." He threw the papers onto the table nearest the stage. I saw the flash of official seals, the forged signatures, the stamps that legally declared me incompetent. They had prepared this for weeks. "Get her!" Deborah commanded. The side doors burst open. 2 men in white scrubs sprinted toward the stage. They weren't hotel security. They were massive, efficient, and carrying restraints. One of them held a syringe cap in his teeth, tearing it off as he ran. Fear, cold and primal, finally pierced my calm. This wasn't a corporate maneuver. This was a kidnapping. If that needle touched my skin, I would wake up in a locked ward, and by the time I regained consciousness, the merger would be signed, the fraud would be buried, and my testimony would be inadmissible forever. "Don't touch me!" I backed away, knocking over the podium as the microphone shrieked. "Grab her!" an orderly shouted. I stumbled, my gown tangling around my legs. Courtney looked up from the floor. The shock gone, replaced by a cruel smile. "You're sick, Savannah," she whispered. "Mom's just trying to help." An orderly wrenched my arm behind my back and forced me to my knees. Pain exploded through me. Sedative ready, another man yelled, raising a needle. I scanned the room, the partners, the investors, the people I'd made rich. They watched in silence. They believed my parents. Do it! My father roared. The needle dropped but never struck. Instead, a deafening crash shook the stage. My father smashed my Innovator of the Year statue into the control laptop. Sparks flew. The screen went black. That footage is stolen, he shouted. Before I could move, a police officer entered. Officer Miller. My father's golf buddy. She's violent, Robert said. She assaulted her sister. I begged him to look at the screen. He didn't. He looked at my torn dress. Then at my father. I see it, he said. He arrested me. Courtney quietly kicked the poisoned glass out of sight and held up the transfer papers. I'm CEO now, she whispered, and I'm pressing charges against you. No one spoke. No one helped. The room chose power over truth. As Miller dragged me toward the exit, he muttered, "We'll sedate you in the car." The doors exploded inward. Federal agents stormed the room. FBI, on the ground. My mother pointed at me. Arrest her. The lead agent ignored her and stopped in front of Courtney. You are under arrest for wire fraud, falsifying clinical trial data, and conspiracy. Courtney screamed. My parents were cuffed. Miller froze. I leaned close to my sister. The moment you signed, you inherited everything. It's called the Responsible Corporate Officer Doctrine. Her face collapsed. Minutes later, the agent nodded to me. You're free to go. Outside, the night air felt light. Clean. I didn't take the company. I didn't take revenge. I took my freedom. Sometimes, the only way to win is to let them think they destroyed you right before their own rules destroy them.